times build character.
This isn't just a show, this is real life. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish.
You gotta see it before anyone else can see it.
Every second, every minute, every day.
We train for life. We got you.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Relentless Way podcast. Paul Alvear here with my longtime friend and business partner, Matt Strout. We are here, as always, on the verge of bringing human development and human growth to the surface and sharing our stories and our perspective and views, but also giving tools and tactics to help you through certain moments and just through our journey in life. So today the topic is episode number 8. How do you utilize motivation? Motivation is something that's brought to the table. It's something that's brought to the surface. It's brought in many different ways, which we'll get into. We're gonna really get going on how do we utilize it. How is it driven, and how do we utilize the motivation that's brought our way? So to start off, what are a couple ways that motivation is brought to the table? Like, what is motivation?
Yeah, so I think motivation, especially for myself, has been such a progression over the years. So I think as I reflect back and I was, prepping for today and thinking and getting myself ready, I kind of think about motivation all the way back from the beginning of times of like when I was young watching Rocky videos, basically. Like that's like where it started for me, like the Rocky montage workout scenes. I would literally watch them. They'd get me fired up and I'd go work out. So like even back then thinking it was just like that energy, that feeling that you would see, like almost like it was like internal, right? You'd watch it, you start feeling it and you're like, all right, it's go time, to the point where I would then YouTube came around and I was big into bodybuilding. I'd watch, Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, like I'd watch these guys go into work. And I think in the moment it was just like the ability to see another human being doing something, right? And being like, all right, I could do this too. And like feeding off that energy. And I think it's still that, right? There's different levels to it, but it's still that. I think it's the ability to almost like step back and like, sometimes when you see something in front of you, you're just like, it just seems so big, or like, oh my God, how am I going to accomplish this? It allows you to kind of come back to real time and be like, I can overcome adversity, or I can get over this obstacle. Right. Someone else has done it, or people have done things like this, or have overcome different things in their own life. So why can't I? So like you see it and you kind of start feeding off of it. So I think different ways, like you're saying, different ways that we could use it, or that it's used or seen. It would be whether it be different videos. Now there's a bunch of podcasts, right? Like we're doing now, books. There's a lot of different ways, a lot of different tools out there.
Yeah. I kind of, in the same way, I pull the energy from it. Mm-hmm. For me, it's more, when it started, when I first learned how to utilize motivation, or even realize what motivation was or what motivated me, it was based off a lot of energy-driven things. Music, right? Oh, music was a big motivator. You put the headphones on, and whatever you're getting prepared for, you have things that resonate with you. Like you said, you have the words resonate with you. The energy resonates with you. Then there was people. And that's probably a different form, right? There was people that motivated you, whether it was just positively, their words encouraged you or encouraged me, or whether it was maybe someone that was against you in a sense, and they now they'll say the haters motivated you, but it was different then, right? It was just someone that was just pissing you off or competing against you, saying things that maybe you felt deep down wasn't the reality, and that motivated you and drove you to different levels. So for me, it was always energy based, It was always like a feeling and an energy. But as we have grown and gone through, like you said, it spreads out, and you realize like there's many different ways that that motivation can come into your way and into your path. So utilizing that now. You know, I guess what are moments that where did the switch hit? That's a point where we talk about like flipping the switch, right? With a lot of people that we deal with and when we're developing people is we notice the moment, we remember the moment where our switch first flipped or when we were able to flip someone's switch. I think that's when you truly start to find out how to utilize motivation and how to utilize those energies and factors that are pushing you or driving you or building you. And there's many different ways. It happens when you're young in little stints. It happens as you grow older. One time for me, it was on the field of play in sport in baseball, and it was someone on the other side of the field that was just against me constantly, right? Constantly, not 8, 9 years old, just digging at me. And it was actually one of my best friend's fathers at the time. My mom taught me to use that positively, right? Mm-hmm. So right there, I created used that as motivation to drive. But that was more, I guess, of an extrinsic factor in somebody that was kind of being negative and I guess more downward towards me in the moment, which I turned that negative to positive energy and motivation. You know, so there's so many different ways. Places we could pull it from, but on utilizing it, that was a starting point where I learned how to flip my switch.
I love that. I think to always try to remember that the mind controls the emotion, the emotional state, right? So like the mind has the ability when you get to a certain point to over control your feelings, right? Because feelings are emotions that we feel, but when we set out to do something, the chance of you having all the good feels all the time is probably pretty slim. There's going to be more times where you're questioning or nervous or overthinking, right? And I think when the mind set and the decisions can be made that no matter what you feel in the moment, the tasks still need to be accomplished, that's where you really start getting things done. And I think things like this, by putting yourself out, like they say that motivation's kind of like a shower, right? You got to take at least one every day, right? Or you should. Yeah. I mean, just keep hygiene and fresh, right? So motivation is like one of those things that like you can't just do it like, you know, once in a while. Mm-hmm. Like you need to build it up. I almost like to say that you got like a bank of it, right? So when all the different readings and all the different experiences and all those different things has built up my internal bank, that when I feel adversity come to me, like I kind of just stay and I'm just like, all right, let's take a deep breath and let's focus on solutions. But it didn't just happen, right? Like you said, like this was built over time. It was compounded to get to this point. So by using all of those things, you're building your mind up and you're believing in yourself and you're building confidence by not only connecting with others, right? And by others, we've talked about this in the past podcasts, like you don't necessarily need to know some of these people that you study. I don't necessarily know Tony Robbins and Tim Grover and Andy Frisella. They're huge leaders inside of my life that I focus on studying and listening to on my own time, but they give me that internal power as people that have succeeded in their own spaces. Right. And now their mission is to go out to people like us and say, hey guys, you can do this too. And now this is our mission, right? I believe it's like, it's the beautiful cycle of life, right? And we feel this obligation in our hearts now to go out and connect with other people and be like, look, what this really comes down to is it's almost like storytelling and relatability, right? When you listen to these guys, you hear them and they're really good storytellers and they're really good at relating the different struggles and ups and downs and this and that and sideways and upside downs of their own personal journey, but then connecting to anybody in any type of personal journey as well. And when you hear that stuff, like sometimes that's what you need. You almost have to go out of your way to find it because unfortunately, like the reality of the world is like most people that you surround yourself with are not just going to give that off, unfortunately, right? So that's why we take such an obligation to like be that, right? Be that shining light to say, hey, we don't know everything. We're human beings too, but we just have never given up on creating the dream and the vision that we've talked about a long time ago.
Yeah. And I think it's perspective is huge because this day and age it could be confusing. There's so much out there. There's so much available to go and pull from, and kind of do your homework and be influenced by us, but at the same time, you have to still go and put yourself in that situation. You have to go and put yourself in it. Connecting, right? So when I talk about that switch being flipped and you really finding that point of being motivated, truly being motivated, it starts with a connection. And as you just said and used examples of, and you listed some names off, but those names and those people are them to us, to you and I, or to you, right? We are that to somebody else, and somebody else is that to someone else. So in order for you to really utilize that energy and that motivating factor, you have to truly be connected with that individual and feel it. You have to understand it, right? For it to drive you, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't realize that subconsciously there's that connection, and then years later or down the road we say, damn, that's why we work so well together, because we were both kind of shooting for that same direction on that same mission, and we were motivated by similar things, mm-hmm. right? But sometimes you get it right away, and right off the bat you connect with that individual, and we see it a lot in what we do, right? In human development and coaching and physical, mental, and emotional training inside of our facility. It takes time sometimes. It takes time to truly find, and this is something we pride ourselves in as a team, and you and I have done along our whole journey, to find that motivating factor. Some people, it's day one. It's the first time they come in the facility. They connect with you personally. They let things out. You know what motivates them. You have a common bond that you utilize those things. But other people, it's a week down the road, a month down the road, sometimes years down the road. It finally, that beast is finally unleashed, mm-hmm. and they realize what truly makes them tick and what truly motivates them.
It's a really good point, and I think number one, like you're saying, is it's a tough thing, right? Because we want nothing but the best. We want everyone to feel this feeling, but it can't be forced onto anyone. And I think we've gone through our own journey of like trying too hard, and now we're in the position where like we are who we are, and we stand tall, and we keep giving ourselves all of this good stuff and educating and learning and growing, and we've put out into the world that we're the lighthouse, we like to say. Mm-hmm. So like when things aren't going well, you know where to come, and we're a consistent, strong structure that you can come to, and we have this stuff to give out. But we're not looking to go, we're waiting for people to say, hey, I'm ready for this, or I'm ready for this next chapter in my life. I think, though, what it comes down to, the common denominator to get to that point, is when a human being is truly fed up inside, and they can't take it anymore. They're done. And they crave, they want nothing else but to have a change in their life. And Tony Robbins says that you create your own standards. No one else does it for you. So until you get to the point where you look around and you're like, this isn't what I want. Like, this isn't, I want more than this, or I'm worth more than this. Like, nothing will ever change until that moment happens. Right. And then from that moment, it's about going and looking and finding and surrounding yourself with the right people. That's that crazy, very vulnerable state, right? Because now you made that decision. We're conditioned as human beings, psychologically, to be put in these thoughts or these places where like you hold yourself and you think that this is who you are. You think
and
that
it's
this
over,
is what,
it's
and
defined,
that's it. Like, yes, right. And like the reality is that you're conditioned as a human being from when we're little, right? And you come up and sometimes people just get lost in it and they think that that's it, and that's what they got. And like,
it's easy.
Yeah, right. You just want to stay there because it is very uncomfortable to step out of that. Mm-hmm. It's what we know, and the reality is that you can recondition yourself. Mm-hmm. It's very possible, but it starts with that first internal decision, like you're saying, when you say to yourself, I want more than this. Like, this isn't the end for me. And then the ability to step away, have a little bit of loneliness. We talked about that too, because there's a little isolation now in this period of you wanting to be different, for you wanting to step up and step away from the common stuff and the things that you're comfortable with and step into uncomfortable territory that you don't even know what's on the other side. And that's where surrounding yourself with really good people comes into play. And
being patient, because I feel that it it could happen slow, and that's the way it should happen. It's supposed to happen, but at the same time, you could be in it and not even realize it, that how close you are to, like you said, making that decision that you're fed up. Mm-hmm. And we see it a lot, right? When we're dealing with people, we deal with people all the time. We see it with some scenarios with our coaches, with our own team, where they're working with somebody and they know it, the person knows it, it's not talked about. The moments go on, and when I say moments, it might be days or weeks, and it feels like forever. But you just have to be patient. You have to bring them through it. And like you said, that individual has to be truly fed up and ready to take that step on their own and to utilize that motivation in the right way. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely, there's many ways to utilize it. We kind of just talked to a point of like, where does motivation come from? Mm-hmm. Types of motivation a little bit. One thing we mentioned in our last episode, a topic we love talking about, episode 7 was editing conversations. Mm-hmm. And in that came up cheap motivation. How do we utilize cheap motivation? What is cheap motivation? I want to redefine it. Yeah. I think it's such a valuable thing to use in not a negative way, in a positive way. There's so much that could come from it.
Right, I'm going to tie cheap motivation into harnessing the dark side. I want to tap into that a little bit. So, and that's Tim Grover's special book of Relentless, which is a really good book. I recommend it to anyone. Obviously, Relentless, goes along with who we are. Cheap motivation is, especially, I believe, used in the beginning, like you're talking about, because it's the hardest time, I think, because when you get to a point where you just truly have defined who you are and what you stand for, none of these external factors really play a factor on you because you're just focused, right? But especially in the beginning, cheap motivation is the ability to remember and take all those little comments and those little things from different people on the outside of questioning you, what you're doing, why you're doing it,
how you were treated,
all these things, right? In a way of like, you ultimately are doing your own life journey for yourself, okay? But it takes a while to get to that point, like I said. So in the beginning, when you're stepping into these unknown territories, there's a lot of questioning, there's anxiety, there's all these things. And I think if you could teach yourself in those moments to use the cheap motivation, so whether it be getting up early to hold yourself accountable to a goal that you set, whether it be checking your emails earlier or getting some movement going on earlier in the day, when you wake up, let's say, right, and you're just feeling like tired, like who really wants to get up super early, like before work, especially to do something that you don't need to do, but you're setting out to do because you know that it's going to help grow you as an individual. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, it's this decision of like, well, first of all, who really knows if I get up, right? That's one thing. Who really knows? I can just say I did, but the reality is yeah. And you're tired. Maybe you went to bed later than you wanted. Maybe you wake up and you're just not feeling it, right? But in that moment, if you could teach yourself to think about those people, those haters, like people like to say, right? Like people that are, calling you out and saying, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, or why are you doing this, If you could think about those people in that moment, that's the cheap motivation, because the real motivation is you doing it for you. The cheap motivation is using an external source to pull and then to motivate you. And if you could use that in the beginning, I think when you get to the end, it helps you, but you don't use it really as much. It's not really about it. You may talk about it, it may come up, but once you cross that line of just truly understanding who you are and what you're doing, you don't need to use it as much. But I do heavily recommend it in the beginning when you're going through these moments, because there is going to be people, and we said this last time, like, people may not come out of it from, like, come to you in like a malicious way. They may just be questioning you, and they may just be like putting it out there because it's just different. You may be taking a different path than what they know, and maybe a more unsecure path or different, right? And people fear different. Most people they don't want that, right? So when you do it, they're like, whoa, like, why are you doing this? You sure you want to do this? Like, so they're almost questioning you, but when you're in that moment, you're like, well, why don't they believe in me? Why are they saying that, right? So so you take that and you kind of use it. Now, I want to lead that into the dark side. So Tim Grover wrote a book called Relentless, and he defines 3 different types of people, and it mainly talked about Michael Jordan, also touches on Kobe Bryant, to legendary men, right? Just men overall, as well as in their spaces. they've dominated where they are. And he said there was something special about them when he noticed working with different individuals. But one thing that he talks about is their ability to harness the dark side. And you just talked about it earlier, right? And that's basically what it was. For me personally, I've gone through my own personal journey as well in life where coming up, I was a short-tempered, no patience. I would freak out if things didn't go right. Playing video games, coming up, I'd lose, I'd freak out, go nuts.
Break the controller,
go crazy, right? Things didn't go right. In sports and competition, I wasn't like a crybaby. I would be quiet. I would just be very quiet and just like very mad.
Right.
Internally, just silence. And I would want to know why. I would reflect on my dad and we'd talk about different things maybe we could have done better. But what I had to learn how to do, because it almost like shut me. So I was either being erratic, right? And being irrational and doing things that when I look back, I'd be like, damn, I wish I didn't do that, right? I never liked the way that I either spoke or the actions that I took because it was nasty. It wasn't nice. So I had to learn along the way how to harness that. And I like to call it like compartmentalizing. Like I would put it somewhere. And instead of allowing it to control me, I took control of it. And I call it the dark side. And the dark side is something that's used now more. And it's, to me, I almost believe it's the evolution of cheap motivation where like you could just take it and hold it, but you just work extra hard. Like you get up extra early, you stay up extra late, you make that extra phone call, you do those things almost to like dig it in. Like it's like the mental or emotional calm state of the things that you can't do physically, but you're able to use them for positive growth inside of whatever you're doing in that moment. So you use it to motivate it. You use it to motivate you and to drive you, but in a calm, cool fashion. And it's a tough thing. But when I read the book and I heard it, I'm like, this is what I need to do. That's why it was so beautiful to hear, because when I look back, I did all those things now, and I get myself now more than ever. It's just because I cared so much. I just wanted to do so great. And I was like, why wasn't that great? Why didn't I win, right? And I understood now as life went on that there's a process. We talked about that. You ain't going to win every experience, but you can learn from them. And I had to learn that along my way. So now I understand the reason why I was so hot and crazy was just because I cared so much. So now, just learning that there's a process and that it's not going to happen overnight, I get that. So it holds me calmer. And then I also know how to take some of that fire and that internal and use it for positive fashion, to go make an extra phone call, go make an extra connection with somebody, go work with someone on the team and help grow them, and then just to keep pushing them forward. So now instead of sitting back and being like, why'd this happen? Take a deep breath, take it and go do something positive with it.
And as you do these things, all unbelievable tools that we touched on, that you just touched on, you learn how to utilize them and it becomes natural, right? It becomes just part of who you are and part of what you do and part of your daily process. Like you said, like taking that shower every day, you utilize that motivation every day. I want to leave off with just a few words of advice in the motivation end, and when you are dealing with these situations, a simple line that I've always been told and that I found to have myself a lot of success because it's so broad is just to kill with kindness, is to do the right thing and just respond in the most positive way, no matter where the motivation is coming from, just to be kind, to respond back in the nicest way possible, and then utilize that motivation how you choose to use it. What's something that comes up to you?
Well, I'm going to just compliment you on that because it's something that we both have grown up with. It's something that we were taught as young kids. And I think in the beginning of our lives, maybe we didn't always use it in the best way possibly. We were told it and then we started using it. And now that's the way of life that we do, is just to always do the right thing. And it's hard to do the right thing, honestly. As leaders, the right thing isn't always the easy thing, right? It's the harder thing to do, to kill with kindness, to hold yourself to a higher standard and to not lower yourself, and to be that bigger influence in the room at all times, to not get lost in it. Because if you think about it, the reason why people get a little hot and bothered is really the internal control that they have on themselves. So there needs to always be that alpha or that person in the room that can just say, all right, let's everybody take a deep breath, let's figure this out type deal, and let's kill with kindness, let's do the right thing. So really great point. I love that. We live by that. I guess where I would want to leave off with it would just be to go out and find that person that really hits you, that really connects with you and that you feel that connection to, and to find a way to put into your schedule on a daily basis, whether it be early, midday, late, but to really make the time, right? Because time is something that we could talk about as well. But like, we all have the same amount of time. There's 168 hours in the week. There's 24 hours in the day. The difference of someone who wins in anything and someone who doesn't is the ability to prioritize and delegate their time. So it's not like something happens and you get more time given to you. It is what it is. We all got the same. That's the most even thing that we have in this world is time. So how you use it is the difference maker. And I think you need to go out of your way to find time in your day. And I love people saying, "Oh, I'm busy, this, that." Like, listen, we're all busy, okay? So either you create the time and make it, or you don't. Mm-hmm. It can be 5 minutes a day, 3 minutes a day. And it'll slowly start building, because you'll realize once you start making that time, you're going to start feeling it and feeding off of it. And you'd be surprised, the more you start putting in this stuff into your mind, you'll almost start putting it out into the world. It's almost like it just becomes who you are. It becomes what you think. Right. It becomes what you speak. And now all of a sudden it's just, and then over time it becomes who you are. Right? So I think with that said is, I mean, you must make time for yourself. Right. You have to.
And like you said, connecting with, find that person to connect with, or even if it's you internally with yourself, utilize that time, help it build your motivation. Episode 8, good energy, good stuff. If again, everybody share away. Obviously if we bring the energy and we bring what you're looking for, we're getting a lot of great feedback from people in our community to start with, family, friends, and clients, people that are really connected with us. Some newer in their journey, some have been on their relentless journey for years, but a lot of people are reaching out and focusing on little points, like just complimenting little things or suggesting little things or highlighting things that really have affected them or that they could really resonate with, is what we're set out to do. We're set out to deliver this podcast and sit here and speak, not just to hear ourselves talk and go on, but to change people's lives. So the Relentless Way podcast, episode 8, share away. Bring anything you have to the table for us. We're always here, and we're always open for suggestion.
Yeah, don't be afraid to hit us up too for personal. You want to have or set up like a personal call, FaceTime. We could catch up. We could shoot back and forth different ideas and feed off of each other. Like we're available. We're doing this so that we can put the word out into the world, but we are available for personal interactions as well. So if you feel like there's something internally that you want to talk about or work on for yourself, contact us, social media, our numbers, whatever you need. Let's get in touch and let's start everybody just feeding off each other. That's what this is. Like Paul said, this is a movement of people coming together, feeding off like-minded experiences and energies, and working to become the next best version of themselves. That's all.